The autumn wind carried whispers through the pine forests of Asheville, North Carolina, whispers of a story so extraordinary that even now, years later, locals speak of it in hushed tones. This isn't just another tale about a girl and her dog. This is a story about courage in the face of corporate greed, about the healing power of animal companionship, and about how sometimes the most unlikely heroes come with 4 paws and a wagging tail. My name is Dr. Rebecca Morgan, and as a veterinary neurologist specializing in animal cognition, I've documented dozens of remarkable human-animal bonds. But none quite like the one I'm about to share with you. When I first heard about 10-year-old Sophie Carter and a German shepherd named Shadow, I was skeptical. The claim seemed fantastical. A dog with abilities beyond normal canine perception, shadowy organizations willing to break laws to reclaim him, and a grieving child at the center of it all. But as I began investigating, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing medical records, I discovered a truth stranger than fiction. What happened in Asheville wasn't just about a special dog. It was about how far powerful interests will go to protect their secrets, and how the purest form of love, that between a child and her companion, can stand against seemingly insurmountable odds. This is their story, pieced together from court documents, witness testimonies, and my own research into the controversial field of enhanced animal cognition. Some names have been changed to protect identities, but the events, as extraordinary as they may seem, are based on documented incidents that forever changed how we understand the bond between humans and animals. Before we dive into the extraordinary events surrounding Shadow, we need to understand Sophie Carter and the world she inhabited before that fateful auction day. Sophie wasn't like other 10-year-olds. While her classmates collected trading cards and obsessed over the latest video games, Sophie immersed herself in animal behavior books and training manuals. This wasn't surprising given her lineage. She was the daughter of Daniel Carter, once celebrated as one of the most innovative service dog trainers in the Southeast. Daniel had this gift, explained Marjorie Winters, his former colleague whom I interviewed last spring. He could read dogs like most people read books. He understood their body language, their capabilities, their limits. But more importantly, he saw their potential in ways others missed. Daniel specialized in training seizure-alert dogs, canines with the remarkable ability to detect subtle chemical changes in a person's body before a seizure occurs. While many trainers worked in this field, Daniel's success rate was unprecedented. His methods were sought after by medical institutions nationwide. There was something almost mystical about watching Daniel work. Marjorie told me, her eyes distant with memory. He'd spend hours just observing a dog, learning its unique personality, before beginning any formal training. He always said, "The dog chooses the path, we just help them walk it." Sophie had inherited her father's intuitive understanding of animals. From the time she could walk, she shadowed him in his training barn, absorbing his techniques, his patience, his respect for the animals in his care. But their world shattered on a rainy April evening, when Daniel's car collided with a truck on Mountain Creek Road. The official report cited hazardous road conditions and poor visibility. Sophie, just 9 at the time, lost not only her father but her mentor, her hero. After Daniel died, something in Sophie went quiet. Lauren Carter, Sophie's mother, shared during our conversation. It was as if a light dimmed. She stopped talking about dogs, stopped visiting the training barn. For months, I worried she'd never find her way back to that passion. Lauren, a high school English teacher, struggled to keep their small family afloat emotionally and financially. Daniel's life insurance provided some security, but the specialized training facility, once their primary source of income, sat empty, a painful reminder of what they'd lost. This was Sophie's world when Shadow entered it. A world still heavy with grief, a family still finding its footing, and a little girl desperately seeking connection to the father she'd lost. As a researcher, I've studied how grief can alter perception, especially in children. Sophie wasn't just looking for a pet when she went to that auction. She was searching for a piece of her father, a way to hold on to his memory through the work he loved. What she found instead would draw her into a controversy that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her father's work and the powerful interests he may have been involved with. The Asheville Livestock Auction Barn has stood on the outskirts of town for nearly 7 decades. Twice monthly, it hosts sales of farm animals, equipment, and occasionally, dogs from various sources, failed hunting dogs, unwanted pets, and sometimes, animals from shuttered training programs. It was the third Saturday in October when Sophie convinced her reluctant mother to take her there. The weather reports noted unseasonably warm temperatures that day, with clear skies and a gentle breeze, a stark contrast to the storm of events that would follow. I remember being surprised by how determined Sophie was, Lauren told me. For months, she'd shown little interest in anything, and suddenly she was insistent on attending this auction. I thought maybe it was just curiosity, or perhaps a way to feel close to Daniel again. What Lauren didn't know was that Sophie had seen a small notice in the local paper listing service dogs and trainees among the items up for auction. Something about those words had called to her, though she couldn't articulate why. I've spent considerable time researching the auction records from that day. According to the official manifest, 17 dogs were sold, mostly hunting breeds, a few farm dogs, and 3 German shepherds listed as discontinued from service training. The manifest noted that one of these shepherds, identified only as Lot 23, had been returned twice due to health concerns and unpredictable behavior. The moment I saw him, something just clicked. Sophie explained during our interview at her home last year. Now 15, she still remembers that day with crystal clarity. He was so thin, and he wasn't moving like the other dogs. They were all barking and jumping, trying to get attention, but Shadow just lay there, watching everything with these amber eyes that seemed to understand more than they should. The auctioneer, Vern Hicks, recalled the scene vividly. That dog wasn't getting any bids. Folks around here know better than to take on an animal with medical issues. I started at $100, got no takers, went down to 75, still nothing. When I hit 50, this little bit of a girl steps forward with a tin box full of coins and small bills. I'll be honest, I almost didn't take her bid, but he did. And for $50.37, every penny Sophie had saved, Shadow became hers. What makes this transaction particularly interesting from a research perspective is what happened next. According to multiple witnesses, including Lauren and Vernon, the moment the gavel fell, Shadow's demeanor changed. The dog, who had been listless and unresponsive, suddenly lifted his head. His ears perked forward, as if recognizing something significant had occurred. It was like he knew, Lauren said. One minute he's this defeated, looking animal, and the next, he's watching Sophie like she's the answer to a question he's been asking for a long time. As they led Shadow from the auction barn, another notable incident occurred, one that would later take on greater significance. A man in a dark coat was observed watching them intently. Security camera footage from the parking lot shows this individual speaking briefly into a cell phone before following Sophie and Lauren to their car. The man has since been identified as Thomas Mercer, a former security consultant for BioCipher Innovations, a pharmaceutical company with a little-known subsidiary focused on animal neurological research. This connection wouldn't become clear until much later, but it marks the first documented instance of corporate interest in Shadow. What's particularly fascinating about this case, from a scientific perspective, is how it challenges our understanding of animal cognition. Was Shadow's change in demeanor merely coincidental, or did he somehow recognize Sophie as significant? The research on canine recognition abilities suggests dogs can identify individuals who display empathy or positive intent toward them. Shadow's response may have been an example of this heightened perception, or perhaps something more, something that would later make him so valuable to those who sought to reclaim him. As Sophie and Lauren drove home that day, neither could have imagined the forces their simple act of compassion had set in motion. They believed they were saving a discarded dog. In reality, they were becoming custodians of a secret that powerful interests had spent millions to develop and would go to extraordinary lengths to protect. The first signs that Shadow was no ordinary dog appeared within days of his arrival at the Carter home. While many rescued animals exhibit anxiety, fear, or defensive behaviors as they adjust to new environments, Shadow displayed none of these typical reactions. Instead, he demonstrated an unusual level of environmental awareness and an almost uncanny ability to anticipate household routines. He knew when Sophie's alarm would go off before it did, Lauren recalled. He'd be sitting by her bed about 30 seconds before the clock rang. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but it happened every morning. More remarkable was Shadow's response to Sophie's emotional states. Dr. James Bennett, the local veterinarian who examined Shadow shortly after his adoption, noted this in his clinical observations. Subject displays heightened response to subtle changes in owner's emotional effect. When Sophie became upset during examination, Needle feared. Canine anticipated distress 15-20 seconds before visible signs appeared. Positioned body between Sophie and medical instruments without command. This behavior is consistent with trained service dogs, particularly those specialized for psychiatric support or seizure alert. However, what made Shadow's case unusual was that he had received no commands or training from Sophie to perform these functions. I've studied animal cognition for over 15 years, and while dogs naturally develop sensitivity to their owner's emotional states, the precision and speed of Shadow's responses exceeded typical canine capabilities. This raised an important question. What kind of training had Shadow received before coming to the Carter family? The answer began to emerge when Sophie discovered her father's old training journals in the abandoned barn behind their house. Daniel Carter had been meticulous in documenting his methods, his successes, and his failures. Among these journals was a leather-bound notebook labeled simply, Project Sentinel. Dade's handwriting changed in this notebook. Sophie explained, showing me the journal during my research visit. It was tighter, more careful, and he used codes for some things, abbreviations I didn't recognize. The journal detailed Daniel's involvement with what he referred to as enhanced cognition protocols for service dogs. The entries described a collaborative project with a research team to develop canines with heightened neurological sensitivity, dogs capable of detecting biochemical changes associated with medical emergencies with unprecedented accuracy. Initial entries expressed enthusiasm about the project's potential to help patients with conditions like epilepsy, diabetes, and cardiac arrhythmias. But as the journal progressed, Daniel's tone shifted dramatically. Protocol 16 showing concerning side effects. One entry read, subject's heightened sensitivity appears to extend beyond target markers. Ethical implications significant. Discussing termination of involvement. The final entry, dated just 3 weeks before Daniel's fatal accident, was particularly troubling. Confirmed my suspicions today. This isn't about helping patients anymore. Filing formal objection. Meeting with jail tomorrow to discuss next steps. Who JL remains unknown. But the timing of this entry relative to Daniel's death raises questions that have never been fully answered. What's particularly significant about these journals from a research perspective is how they align with scientific developments that were occurring in the field of canine neurological enhancement during that period. Between 2015 and 2018, several pharmaceutical companies had invested heavily in developing what they termed bio-responsive detection animals. Essentially, dogs with chemically enhanced sensory capabilities. The ethical concerns around such research were substantial. While enhancing a dog's natural abilities might benefit patients, the potential for side effects, including neurological damage to the animals themselves, presented serious moral questions. Additionally, there were growing concerns about corporate exploitation of these enhanced animals for profit rather than patient care. Sophie's discovery of her father's journals coincided with another significant development. Shadow began experiencing what appeared to be mild seizures. These episodes were brief, typically lasting less than a minute, during which he would become temporarily disoriented. It was scary the first time it happened, Sophie told me. He just froze, and his eyes got this distant look. Then he shook himself and was fine again. But it kept happening, maybe once every few days. Bennett's examination revealed abnormal brain activity consistent with seizure disorders, but with an unusual pattern he hadn't encountered before. These aren't typical canine seizures, he noted in his records. The electrical activity is concentrated in regions associated with sensory processing rather than motor control. When Dr. Bennett ran Shadow's microchip information through the national database, he encountered another anomaly. Portions of Shadow's medical history had been redacted, with access restricted by a corporate privacy block. This is extremely unusual for animal records and suggested involvement by an entity with significant legal resources. Through persistent effort, Bennett eventually obtained partial records indicating Shadow had been part of a research cohort at a facility called the Advanced Canine Development Center, a name that appeared nowhere in public records but matched references in Daniel's journal to ACDC protocols. What we were seeing in Shadow wasn't just training, Bennett explained to me. This dog had undergone some form of neurological modification, something that enhanced his natural abilities, but was also causing these episodic events. In my professional opinion, he had been part of an experimental program that pushed well beyond ethical boundaries. This assessment would prove remarkably accurate as events unfolded. Shadow wasn't simply a failed service dog. He was living evidence of a controversial research program, one that his former handlers were determined to keep secret. The first clear indication that Shadow's presence in the Carter home had attracted unwanted attention came approximately 3 weeks after the auction. Lauren reported receiving multiple hang-up calls on their home phone, and Sophie noticed a black sedan parked near her bus stop on several consecutive mornings. These could have been coincidences, but Eliza Wilson, the Carters' elderly neighbor, provided context that suggested otherwise. During our interview, Mrs. Wilson recalled a concerning encounter she'd had several months earlier. 2 men came to my door asking if I'd seen a German Shepherd in the area. She told me, her hands folded neatly in her lap as we spoke in her sunroom. Said they were from animal control, but they weren't wearing any uniforms, and their car didn't have county markings. They were too interested, too insistent for it to be routine. Mrs. Wilson, a retired nurse with what she called a healthy suspicion of strangers asking odd questions, had taken note of their appearance and vehicle. When she later saw the same car near the Carter home, she felt compelled to warn Lauren. This warning came just in time. The following night, the Carter home experienced a break-in while the family was attending a school function. Nothing was taken, but there were clear signs that someone had searched the house thoroughly. Most telling was that Shadow's bed and food bowls appeared to have been examined closely. The local police report classified it as a routine burglary, but Officer Nathan Reeves, who responded to the call, had noted some inconsistencies. Typical BNS in this area target electronics, jewelry cache, he told me when I reviewed the case. This one didn't fit the pattern. Valuable items were left untouched, but the dog's things were disturbed. That raised flags for me. Officer Reeves recommended the Carters install security cameras, which they did. This decision would prove crucial, as the footage captured 3 nights later showed a figure attempting to enter their backyard, a trespassing incident that coincided with Shadow exhibiting extreme distress, barking and scratching at the back door nearly 30 minutes before the intruder appeared on camera. From a research perspective, this timeline is significant. Shadow's reaction preceded any visual or auditory evidence of the intruder's presence, suggesting he detected something beyond normal canine sensory range. This aligns with the enhanced capabilities described in Daniel's research journals and provides compelling evidence that Shadow possessed neurologically augmented perception. The situation escalated dramatically the following week when Sophie discovered a note in her school backpack. Written in block letters, it stated simply, "THD dosen to yo you. Rituan hemo ar fasicos QNCS." This direct threat transformed what might have been dismissed as paranoia into a legitimate safety concern. Lauren contacted the police again, but with no fingerprints or witnesses. There was little they could do beyond increasing patrols in the neighborhood. It was at this point that Noah Chen entered the picture, a figure whose role in this story deserves particular attention. Noah had been Daniel Carter's closest friend, a former military K9 handler who had collaborated with Daniel on training methods before taking a position with a private security firm. Upon hearing about the threats from Lauren, Noah immediately recognized the situation's severity. "This isn't random," he told them, according to Lauren's account. "Someone wants Shadow back badly enough to risk criminal charges. That tells me they're afraid of what he represents." Noah's security background provided critical context for understanding the nature of the threat. Corporate espionage and protection of intellectual property are significant concerns in biomedical research. If Shadow had indeed been part of an experimental program involving proprietary neurological enhancement techniques, he would represent both valuable intellectual property and potential evidence of unethical research practices. Think about it. No explained to Lauren and Sophie. A dog with provable enhanced cognitive abilities would be worth millions in the right markets. But if those enhancements came through questionable methods, that same dog becomes a liability that could cost a company everything. This assessment proved prescient. Through careful investigation, No identified the black sedan that had been surveilling the Carter home as registered to a shell company with ties to Biocipher Innovations, a pharmaceutical corporation with a significant investment in neurological research. Biocipher had never publicly acknowledged any work with service animals or canine cognition enhancement. However, financial records Noah obtained showed substantial funding allocated to a subsidiary called Sentinel Biological Systems, a name that echoed the Project Sentinel referenced in Daniel's journals. The connection between Daniel's research, Shadow's unusual abilities, and corporate interest in reclaiming the dog was becoming increasingly clear. What remained uncertain was how far these interests would go to protect their investment, a question that would be answered with disturbing clarity in the events that followed. The situation reached a critical juncture on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. Sophie was home alone with Shadow while Lauren attended a parent-teacher conference at the school where she taught. Noah, concerned about leaving them unprotected, had installed additional security measures and was monitoring the property remotely. What happened next was captured by the security cameras Noah had positioned around the Carter home. At approximately 7:15 p.m., a utility van parked on the street. Two men in what appeared to be electric company uniforms approached the front door when Sophie, following safety protocols Noah had established, didn't answer. The men moved to the rear of the house. The footage shows one man attempting to disable the back door's security system, while the other scanned the property with what experts later identified as a portable RFID reader, likely searching for Shadow's microchip signal. Shadow's reaction was immediate and extraordinary. According to Sophie's account, he began displaying agitated behavior several minutes before the men appeared on camera. As they approached the back door, Shadow positioned himself between Sophie and the potential threat, his posture rigid and defensive. When one of the men broke the glass panel on the back door, Shadow's response demonstrated behavior well beyond typical canine protection instincts. Rather than barking aggressively or attacking, he herded Sophie to the home's safe room, a reinforced closet. Noah had prepared for exactly this scenario and positioned himself at the entrance. He was so calm, Sophie recalled, not scared or angry like you'd expect. It was like he knew exactly what to do. From the safe room, Sophie activated the emergency alert system Noah had installed, which simultaneously contacted him and the local police. The intruders, apparently realizing they triggered security measures, fled before authorities arrived. This incident marked a turning point in the case for several reasons. First, it provided clear evidence that the threat to recover Shadow involved individuals willing to commit serious crimes. Second, Shadow's response demonstrated sophisticated protective behaviors consistent with advanced training and enhanced cognitive abilities. And third, the police were now fully engaged in investigating what could no longer be dismissed as isolated incidents. Detective Marcus Holloway, who took over the case following the break-in attempt, approached it with appropriate gravity. When you have adults targeting a home with a child present, that crosses every line. He told me during our interview at the Asheville Police Department. This wasn't about a dog anymore. This was about protecting a family from what appeared to be organized criminal activity. Detective Holloway's investigation yielded crucial information. The van used in the attempted break-in had been reported stolen the previous day. However, traffic cameras had captured its license plate at an intersection near a motel on the outskirts of Asheville. When police investigated, they discovered the motel room had been rented under a corporate account belonging to Sentinel Biological Systems. The Biocipher subsidiary Noah had previously identified. This direct link between the break-in attempt and Biocipher provided the legal leverage necessary for Detective Holloway to obtain a search warrant for Sentinel's regional office. What they found there was limited. The company had apparently been alerted to the investigation and had removed most documents. But a single email recovered from a printer memory provided the smoking gun. Ray Asset Recovery. S7 authorization granted for final retrieval attempt. Subject represents significant liability given Carter connection. Timeline critical before neurological degradation compromises value. Use all necessary resources. The email was signed simply, Mercer, the same name as the man observed watching Sophie and Shadow at the auction. With this evidence, Detective Holloway was able to expand the investigation and obtain court orders for Biocipher's records related to canine research. The company's legal team fought vigorously to block these orders, citing proprietary research concerns, but a judge ruled that the potential criminal activity overrode corporate privacy interests. While this legal battle was unfolding, Lauren made the decision to relocate Sophie and Shadow to a more secure location, her sister's farm in a neighboring county. Noah accompanied them, providing security and continuing his own investigation into Biocipher's activities. It was during this period of relative safety that Shadow experienced his most severe seizure yet. For nearly 3 minutes, he was completely unresponsive, his body rigid and trembling. When he recovered, Sophie noticed something alarming, a small bald patch behind his ear, where the skin appeared irritated. Careful examination revealed what appeared to be a small surgical scar, long healed but visible when the fur was parted. Dr. Bennett, who drove out to the farm to examine Shadow, confirmed Sophie's suspicion. Something had been implanted beneath Shadow's skin. It could be an advanced tracking device, or a medical implant designed to release compounds into his system. Dr. Bennett explained, "Without proper imaging equipment, I can't say for certain." The discovery of this implant provided another piece of the puzzle. Shadow hadn't simply been trained differently. He had been physically modified, likely as part of the experimental program Daniel had documented in his journals. This revelation coincided with Noah uncovering perhaps the most disturbing information yet: financial records indicating that Daniel Carter had received a substantial payment from Biocipher 3 weeks before his fatal accident, followed by an insurance payout to his estate that came from a policy Biocipher had taken out on his life. The implications were chilling. Had Daniel's death truly been an accident, or was it connected to what his journal described as his intention to file a formal objection to the direction of Project Sentinel? These questions would soon find answers as events accelerated toward their dramatic conclusion. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A whistleblower within Biocipher, identified in court documents only as Employee J, contacted Detective Holloway with information about a research facility located on private property outside Asheville. According to this source, the facility housed the remaining animals from Project Sentinel, including several dogs exhibiting neurological issues similar to Shadow's. The whistleblower provided floor plans, security protocols, and most importantly, evidence that Biocipher executives had ordered the destruction of research records following police interest in their connection to Shadow. This destruction of evidence constituted obstruction of justice and gave authorities the leverage they needed to act quickly. On December 14th, just 7 weeks after Sophie had purchased Shadow at the auction, a joint task force of local police, state authorities, and representatives from the FDA's Criminal Investigation Division executed a search warrant on the Biocipher facility. What they discovered there shocked even seasoned investigators. The facility housed 23 dogs, all German Shepherds, in various states of health. Medical records indicated they had been subjected to experimental procedures involving neural implants and chemical compounds designed to enhance specific brain functions. Most disturbing was the discovery of a specialized laboratory where researchers had been attempting to replicate whatever had made Shadow unique. According to documents seized during the raid, Shadow, designated Subject S7, in their records, had been the only dog in the program to demonstrate sustained cognitive enhancement without catastrophic neurological side effects. The facility's records confirmed what Noah and Detective Holloway had suspected. Daniel Carter had indeed been involved with the program initially but had withdrawn his support after witnessing concerning side effects in the test subjects. His expertise had been crucial to the program's limited success, and his departure had left researchers struggling to maintain progress. Most significantly, the records included email correspondence suggesting that Thomas Mercer, BioCipher's head of security, had been tasked with ensuring Carter's continued silence in the weeks before Daniel's fatal accident. While not definitive proof of foul play, these emails raised serious questions about the circumstances of his death. The raid resulted in the arrest of 7 BioCipher employees, including Mercer, on charges ranging from animal cruelty to corporate espionage. The company's stock plummeted as news of the scandal broke, and additional whistleblowers came forward with information about other questionable research practices. For Sophie and Shadow, however, the most important outcome was safety. With BioCipher's operations exposed and key personnel facing criminal charges, the threat had been neutralized. They could return home without fear of further attempts to reclaim Shadow. But the story doesn't end with the raid or the arrests. The true resolution, and the heart of why this case matters to our understanding of the human-animal bond, lies in what happened next. In the aftermath of the BioCipher scandal, Sophie faced a difficult reality. The medical records recovered during the raid confirmed that Shadow's seizures were the result of the experimental procedures he had undergone. The implant behind his ear contained traces of compounds designed to enhance neural connectivity in regions of the brain associated with sensory processing. Dr. Bennett, consulting with veterinary neurologists, determined that while the implant could be safely removed, the changes to Shadow's brain chemistry were permanent. He would likely continue to experience seizures throughout his life, though proper medication could help manage their frequency and severity. This diagnosis presented Sophie with her greatest challenge yet. Shadow wasn't simply a pet she had rescued. He was living evidence of the work that had ultimately led to her father's death. Caring for him meant accepting a daily reminder of that loss and the corporate malfeasance that had caused so much pain. Many people in her position might have chosen to place Shadow with a specialized rescue organization or in a research sanctuary where his unique needs could be addressed by professionals. No one would have blamed Sophie for making that choice. Instead, she chose a different path, one that would ultimately transform both their lives and the lives of countless others. With her mother's support, Sophie converted her father's abandoned training barn into a rehabilitation center for the other dogs rescued from the BioCipher facility. Using the substantial settlement the company was forced to pay the Carter family, they equipped the space with appropriate medical resources and enlisted Dr. Bennett's expertise to develop care protocols for dogs with neurologically enhanced sensitivities. These dogs didn't ask for what was done to them. Sophie explained when I asked about her decision. They deserve to live the best lives they can, with people who understand their special needs. The Sophie Carter Canine Rehabilitation Center, as it came to be known, quickly gained recognition for its innovative approach to working with neurologically atypical dogs. Rather than viewing their enhanced sensitivities as disabilities to be managed, Sophie developed training methods that channeled these abilities into constructive applications. Shadow became the cornerstone of this program. Despite his health challenges, he demonstrated remarkable abilities as a therapy dog, particularly with children experiencing emotional trauma. His enhanced sensitivity to subtle changes in human emotional states made him uniquely capable of responding to distress before it escalated. He knows what you need before you do. One young client told me during my visit to the center, "When I start feeling bad inside, Shadow's already there, leaning against me or putting his head in my lap." This ability to anticipate and respond to human emotional needs with extraordinary precision represents the positive potential of the research BioCipher had pursued for less altruistic purposes. In Sophie's hands, what had been developed as a commercial asset became a healing gift. The story of Sophie and Shadow offers several profound lessons about the relationship between humans and animals, corporate ethics, and the healing power of purpose. First, it reminds us that the bond between a child and an animal can be a powerful force for healing and growth. Sophie's connection with Shadow gave her the strength to face extraordinary challenges and ultimately to transform her grief into meaningful action. This reflects what research consistently shows, that animal companionship can provide unique emotional support, particularly for children processing trauma or loss. Second, this case highlights the ethical questions surrounding animal research and enhancement. While BioCipher's methods were clearly exploitative and harmful, the capabilities they help develop in dogs, like Shadow, have legitimate beneficial applications when approached with proper care and respect for the animals involved. This nuanced reality challenges us to consider carefully how we balance scientific advancement with ethical treatment of the animals that make such progress possible. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Sophie and Shadow's story demonstrates how purpose can emerge from pain. By choosing to care not only for Shadow, but for all the dogs affected by BioCipher's experiments, Sophie transformed a personal tragedy into a mission that benefits countless others. Her rehabilitation center now serves as a model for similar programs nationwide, and her protocols for working with neurologically enhanced dogs have been adopted by service dog organizations across the country. My dad always said that dogs have gifts we're just beginning to understand. Sophie told me as we concluded our interviews. He believed our job wasn't to exploit those gifts, but to honor them by helping each dog find its purpose. That's what I'm trying to do. Finish what he started, but do it right. In a world where corporate interests often override ethical considerations, and where the exploitation of animals for human benefit remains commonplace, the Carter Canine Rehabilitation Center stands as a testament to a different possibility, one where the unique bond between humans and animals serves as the foundation for healing on both sides of the relationship. Shadow, now 8 years old, still experiences occasional seizures. His muzzle has begun to gray, and he moves a bit more slowly than he once did. But every morning, he still walks beside Sophie through the rehabilitation center, greeting each dog and visitor with the same extraordinary awareness that makes him special. And in his amber eyes, if you look closely, you can see what Sophie saw that day at the auction. Not just intelligence or enhanced perception, but a capacity for connection that transcends the boundaries between species and reminds us of our shared capacity for resilience, adaptation, and love.